Hey everybody, welcome to In Response, the Magic the Gathering debate show. I am the Magic Man Sam, filling in for Josh Lee Kwai, who I am told is currently stuck somewhere in a 9-person Commander game. So we're just going to go on without him for right now.
Our first topic this week is Magic the Gathering art. Does it all look the same? Many Magic the Gathering players comment that older art feels more distinct and stylistic, while new art can appear homogeneous in nature. Is this true, or is nostalgia possibly clouding our vision? Sam, you're going to be arguing that Magic art is just as distinct and stylistic as ever. I am really excited to hear what you have to say, and you bringing your particular expertise to this topic. You have 90 seconds when you're ready.
All right, so first and foremost, I've heard this complaints quite a bit that all Magic looks the same. You have to acknowledge that Wizards of the Coast is creating a commercial product, and because of that, they have a brand and a vision to uphold. The visual identity and landscape of Magic has to look and feel the same. It's similar to like a Mario game coming out. We know in our heads what Mario looks like, and Nintendo is attent to that. It's the same thing with Wizards of the Coast. Now, within that visual identity, there is a ton of nuances. That's the whole point of my Magic art series, is to highlight all of the stylistic preferences and tendencies that all of Magic's artists, employ in their visual work. I hear this debate quite a bit attached to digital art specifically. A lot of folks like to think that because it's digital, it all looks the same. But I invite you to look at the magic art of Raymond Swanland, for example, who has a ton of action and a ton of lines. He likes to do the Dutch angle and tilts his artwork a bit, and compare that to maybe the work of Victor Adame Minguez, who is utilizing a lot of rich colors, specifically yellow, and his art looks nothing like Raymond Swanland, even though they're both working in the digital realm. So it's a commercial product. They have an identity to uphold, and they have a product to sell. But within that, there's a lot of nuances, and it really does just take looking at the product. We're not in 1993 anymore. You can't just send a random artist a non-descriptive image about what you want. You have to have an identity and a vision.
Well, those are some really cool points, Sam, and I really am glad that we have someone such as yourself for this particular topic, because your expertise is evident.
All right, Prof, I'd love to hear your side of the story. You have 90 seconds. Let's hear why you think all Magic art looks the exact same.
I want to start by saying that I have no problem whatsoever with digital art, and I think that it's very unfair for people to assume that just because an artist uses digital tools as opposed to traditional tools, that this somehow makes the art any less art or somehow inferior or homogeneous. It is not the artist that I am discussing here today, nor the tools that they use, but rather the art direction in Magic the Gathering. You see, in that ancient time known as the 90s, there was none, and we had a major problem where different cards within a set would look so wildly different from one another that it was hard to believe they were from the same plane of origin. And so style guides were created, art direction was emphasized, and there was a uniformity within cards of a set. Unfortunately, the pendulum swings both ways, and now we are so far in the extreme towards that uniformity that most of the cards from current sets all look dramatically alike. And your example of Goombas was spot on. One has wings on its head, one has a Mario mustache, but those Goombas are identical. And so too is today's Magic art. We now have a situation where if you lined up all the art from within a particular color without its border or title, you would probably have great difficulty telling them apart. Which one of these is Hour of Devastation versus Hour of Doom? I don't know. Do you?
All right, Prof, that was a pretty heavy-handed argument. I can dig it. There's some gems in there.
Well, I have been accused of many things, and certainly heavy hands is one of them. Sam, I'm looking forward to the more delicate touch of your 45-second rebuttal when you're ready.
All right, Prop, I really like this exercise of taking away the card frame and just looking at the art by itself, maybe grouped by color. That's fine. One of the people I admire in the art community, Vorthos Mike, one of his big thesis statements for art reviews is back in the day, back in the early 90s, mid 90s, we would discover a set based on the commons and the uncommons. We weren't looking at rares because we didn't have a lot of money to spend on cards. Nowadays, we're looking at mostly the rares and the mythics to determine what a set looks like. And a lot of those will look similar. You know, Planeswalkers have a very, very rigid visual art design. But if you're looking at all those commons and uncommons, I promise, if you just take maybe 5 minutes to do this exercise, you'll start to pick up on all the tiny little subtleties that separate these cards.
I like debating with you already, Sam, because we're basically assigning each other a lot of exercises and homework. It's definitely a different, more academic feel than usual, and I am all about that.
You know, I agree. It's all about finding solutions, not just whining at one another. So, pop quiz, you've got 45 seconds on the clock for rebuttal. Go ahead, Prof.
I love the idea of my rebuttal being a pop quiz, and so here it is. Can you tell me what Huatli looks like based on the card art without describing the dinosaur she rides, the setting she is in, the clothing she wears? What does the woman look like? Is she young? Is she old? Based on the art. Take a look at it, and I'm willing to bet that you can name no distinctive features. You could not describe Huatli to me in a way that I could pick her out of a crowd without looking for the fact she's on a dinosaur. What about Braid's Cabal minion? There's one I think you could describe to me in such detail. This, more than anything, illustrates the difference. Can you say what Alesha, who smiles at death, looks like? Her face is the smallest, most indistinct part of the artwork.
Very fair points. Maybe we're putting too much emphasis on one aspect of visual design, but you have to remember, you know, Magic cards have to display a lot of information. Not only the citizens that inhabits the world, not only the planeswalkers, our heroes, but you have to think about where these people live. What are we going to decide to put on the land cards? What are we going to decide to put on enchantments? What are the structures looking like? What are the villains looking like? And then just like all the pawns and the pieces of the puzzle. So it's not just about recognizing and being able to distinguish, you know, a face from another face from another face.
But shouldn't you be able to? Shouldn't you be able to recognize and distinguish a face from another face? You just described land, enchantment, artifact, things like that. But wouldn't, at the very least, for these planeswalker cards or legendary creature cards, let alone just a regular creature card, shouldn't you be able to actually see what the creature looks like? Isn't land something that is going to be less emphasized, or shouldn't that be something that is less emphasized in a creature card? And that's where I think a lot of this homogeny is starting to come from, is no wonder that a lot of these cards look so much alike to many of us. It's because there's so much of the landscape being emphasized over the individuals. And again, this is not the case with everything. I mean, what's the card by Victor in the current set with the character and his face up really close? That's an amazing one.
I'm glad you highlighted Emperor's Vanguard, Prof. That's a beautiful illustration, tying my point again, elevating that each artist can interpret a piece as they wish. Victor chose a wonderful scene of a couple of folks who really paint the picture of the citizens that live here. And I'm glad that you could call upon it just from memory, just from thinking about it. So I think we might be at a standstill here.
I totally did not cut the camera there and look it up, and totally did not, just right from memory.
Well, touche, Prof. Still, I think regardless, you have to separate the argument from recognizing one character to painting the picture of a whole world. It's a matter of scale and optics here.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. So what's our next topic, Sam?
All right, Prof. Our next topic, we mentioned it just a second ago. It's the Planeswalker, the role of the Planeswalker, not only as a character in the game, but as a card type. And I'm interested to see what you have to say in terms of making sure we keep the Planeswalker as it is. Nothing about the Planeswalker should change. That's your role. You've got 90 seconds to argue. Go ahead.
I'm going to preface this argument by saying I hate Planeswalker cards. I hate the flavor of them. I hate the mechanics of them. I hate what they do to the game. But I am an old fogey and not the person running a multi-million-dollar corporation. And so I am going to argue here today that we do not want to see Planeswalkers change because the Planeswalker card has been the greatest business decision for Wizards of the Coast since the implementation of the game itself. When Planeswalkers came out 10 years ago, they were a shot in the arm of what was a lethargic game at that point. They quickly became the most recognizable and iconic aspect of the game. They are what get kids opening up packs, searching for that mythic rare planeswalker that they identify with. They are what sells the new set, being oftentimes the format-defining cards of both limited and standard. Even if you're someone like me that personally dislikes the emphasis and role of planeswalkers, they have become the engine of Magic the Gathering, and without them, or with a dramatic change that would make them something else entirely, the game would suffer, and nobody wants that. Planeswalkers are to Magic the Gathering like comedy is to a sitcom, absolutely integral and necessary.
Oh, Prof, I knew you hated Planeswalker cards, so I was very happy looking at the notes that you would have to argue in favor of their existence. This gives me nice Schadenfreude joy, yeah.
Well, it's not so much the issue as it is the rhetor's ability to present a well-formed argument, and that's something I can do pro or con on any two-sided issue. Sam, this is something you actually do believe, so I really want to hear what you have to say. 90 seconds when you're ready.
All right, Prof, first things first, the superhero trope is fatigued. You know, right now there's a million superhero movies, and I think I'm just getting sick of seeing this over and over, and I don't want that to invade my favorite game. You know, the Gatewatch is a perfect example of this push to make characters that are the biggest and the baddest and just go conquer worlds. I say leave that in the past. It's time to reinvent the role. Mechanically speaking, you can do this in a couple of ways. One of my favorite things when I used to play MMOs was going into a new zone, going to the inn, and in the back of the inn, there's this very interesting character who really doesn't affect the main storyline very much, but he gives you a quest, and the quest allows you to discover something new about the world, and maybe it gives you a small bonus item that you wouldn't have got otherwise. Let's turn that into Magic. So what my solution is, keep the Planeswalker card type, but instead of subtype Planeswalker, you have subtype, I don't know, Hero, or subtype Side Quest, or something along those lines. And the card type itself maybe has 2 abilities instead of 3 with an ultimate. Maybe it just has 1 ability. You know, it sucks for every limited player out there when you're, playing a really close game, and suddenly someone casts a Planeswalker and the game's basically over. What if instead they cast a subtype hero card and they only had 1 ability and it gave them a small advantage, but it wasn't impossible to beat? That's the kind of design space I'd like to see. I think Dovin Baan is the perfect example of what I'm trying to illustrate. A character that affected the storyline but wasn't the most, vicious sort of villain. That's it. I like Dovin Baan as the example. We'll go with that.
Dovin Baan is a very interesting example, and I think there's a lot of others. I'd even offer in Arlen Cord as these characters that didn't end up having an integral part of the storyline, but really captured players' imaginations with their brief appearance.
All right, cool, sure, Prof, but you're arguing against me, not in favor of me, so I guess it's time for your rebuttal. 45 seconds on the clock.
Magic Man, you and I are the art house nerds scoffing at these current superhero movies, saying that they're big action and dumbed down and that we are sick of them. But there's 1,000 of them for a reason, because everyone else is going to see them. The 50th Thor movie is out because the previous 49 made a fortune, and so too is the case with Planeswalkers. You or I might want to sit back and redesign and reinvent them and diminish them and emphasize other aspects of the game, but the vast majority of both players and potential players are obsessed with them. In fact, Planeswalkers have been shown to be one of the keys to exciting and intriguing potential players. Diminish that role, they need to emphasize it, whether you or I like it or not. But, you know, it's an issue that I think we do care about because we care about the game. Sam, the final word in this debate is yours. 45 seconds.
All right, Prof, you're right. We are the art house nerds, but we still have a say in the game. Imagine for a minute, instead of making these Planeswalker cards like they've been making them for the past 7-8 years, there's 102 Planeswalker cards right now that Wizards of the Coast could appeal to us and make a new subtype that doesn't destroy the game, but can still sell it as the face of the set. Even if your face of the set isn't the most powerful creature or character, I think there's still a lot of charm that people can gravitate towards. I mean, look at Fubblthup. Look how much commercial success Fubblthup had for the company, and the card did nothing, right? So there's still a bunch of us who can speak with our wallets, even though we're not invested in the same way a new player might be. That's where I am with that. I think we should move on.
Do you really think that if we were to go down to a casual Magic event at a local game store, not a GP, but just a bunch of kids coming in to play Magic with their friends after school, how many of them know who Fibblethip is or could recognize or even know that that's his name? This is something that highly entrenched and enfranchised players latched onto. And just as the way that we talked about the idea of looking at old art with nostalgia-covered glasses, you're possibly looking at this situation through highly enfranchised glasses. Is Fibblethip really going to sell a set more than Jace?
Yeah, he's not going to sell a set more than Jace. We do need a big baddie, but there's still room for both, I think. One powerful Planeswalker, sure. Constructed players can go have fun with their new Chandra. I want more Dovin Bonds. I want more Ashioks. These kinds of characters that tie us to a plane. And again, can still sell a set, man. I think it's there. Here's my nostalgia glasses, by the way. That's fine.
I'll tell you this, I really do hate how when a Planeswalker card gets dropped, especially in Limited, that's game over. You just mentioned Ashiok. One of my most hated memories is where I sat down to draft. I was completely unprepared. I drafted absolute garbage, but I happened to crack open an Ashiok, and I went undefeated that day because I managed to get Ashiok out every single game, and I know that it was not due to any skill or strategy on my part, and it was not due to my opponents getting, say, mana screwed. It was because I happened to open the one pack with the one Planeswalker card, and I happened to get it out every time. There was no way to interact with Ashiok. Ashiok completely took over, and with my completely disastrous jank draft deck, I just won, and that's what I really hate about Planeswalker cards, is the way in which it's Planeswalker or bust most of the time.
Exactly. That's why you're arguing for my point again. That's why we got to reinvent.
We're not in the debate anymore, so I can be honest with this.
That's good. I like opening up the candid room, That's it. We have to make one or two powerful Planeswalkers, and the rest can just be fodder for draft.
But if we make Magic as an art house film, then it's relegated to the art house. There's a reason why we even say art house, is because it's not playing at the Cineplex. How many people, let me ask you this, Sam, how many people went to go see the previous Avengers Kakamemi movie versus how many people went to go see Michael Keaton's Birdman?
Yeah, this is just a systemic problem of our society not appreciating the true arts, and that's why the warriors like you and I
Yes, I agree, and we really do know best, We really know best.
Hey, Michael Keaton's Birdman was amazing. It's all one shot.
Was a great
film. Did they do it? How did they do it?
Yeah, okay. All right, moving on to our final topic. We are going to bookend this show by talking once again about Magic card art, but we're looking at it through a different lens, and that lens is multiple artworks for the same card. This is something where when a card is now reprinted within a set, we oftentimes see new art for it reflecting that plane. When we have promos coming out, obviously those promos have alternate art. Alternate art is something that once was rare and now is highly expected of reprints and promos. Is all this art a good or bad thing? Should you have a single piece of artwork that represents a card, or should we have 10? Sam, you are going to be arguing that we want this cornucopia of alternate arts. So when you are ready, 90 seconds, I'm looking forward to your argument.
All right, Prof, you and I both know that choice is the lifeblood of Magic. There are a million different types of sleeves, a million different types of playmats. Giving Magic players choice is what they love the best. I did a video on Khans of Tarkir, and I argued that Khans of Tarkir was a great set because it gave players a bunch of choices. This is why we play strategy games. We love confronting a decision tree of choices and making a bunch of small little decisions that eventually leads to victory. The same idea is reflected in aesthetics. This is why Magic players will go and buy the Invocation spell Pierce instead of just the regular common from Zendikar block, right? Even though there's a $40 difference, it's because they like to express themselves. Now, the second thing with reprinting new cards with new art is it gives new artists an opportunity to express themselves as well on new cards and break into the game. Commissioning new artists is always good for the game. It's good for the health of the game and for the community that builds it. Final thing, Vintage Artist Constructed. It's a format where you get 60 cards from Magic's past, and you can only build a deck based on cards that a certain artist has done. So Lucas Graciano just got Duress in Ixalan, and that was huge because his deck just got a little bit better. He already had Thoughtseize, a reprint from Theros. He provided the new art, and now he has Duress. So there actually is a mechanical component to new card art coming on new cards.
Vintage Artist Constructed. Okay, well, I'm sure that's very important to the 6 people who play that format. But yeah, okay.
The 6 people that play it? What are you talking about? You're the biggest fan of Highlander. I've never seen a Highlander deck in my life. Like, get out of here with this. All right. I know you like to argue. Go ahead. You can just spill your 90 seconds of whatever you want to say about new card art.
The original idea behind keeping the card art the same on reprints was that no matter what language a card was in, players could recognize it by the artwork. And so a Doomblade in French or a Doomblade in Japanese or a Doomblade in English was instantly recognizable because it had that same art on it. This had a wonderful side effect of creating nostalgia. And nostalgia is a big part of Magic the Gathering. We talked about that in our earlier argument. Well, the reason why it was so big is that we had a singular artwork to associate with a card. Having an alternate artwork to create bling or a prized card for people to go after for their collections is fine, but having 9 pieces of artwork for, let's say, Duress, this is overly excessive, and it waters down the potency and power of each of those individual artworks. Yes, self-expression is important, but let us remember that there is a limit to this. And at a certain point, when you have 9 different artworks for each card of importance, you can't recognize them by that individual artwork. Players are constantly saying, wait, is that a Duress? Wait, what is this? People can put cards in a different language and you don't know what card it is. And it has the added effect of making it so that no one card of those 9 is special.
Prof, I'm telling you, man, you of all people would love Vintage Artist Constructed. Now pitch it back to me so I can give you some heat.
All right, I'm going to pitch it back to Sam so he can give me some more heat along the lines of Vintage Artist Constructed. Sam, joking aside, I really want to hear your rebuttal. 45 seconds when you're ready.
Let me ask you this, Prof. How often are you in a game between 2 people who don't speak the same language, honestly? And how often are you going to be very confused by a new card? Maybe it happens once, and then you guys can look it up and agree that this is the new version of Negate that you've never seen before. But after that point, you're going to know it forever. I think Magic players are very, very good and astute at memorizing new cards. And how about this? Again, it's all about a solution. How about what Jason Rainville did with the new cryptic command? He has a small reference, a visual reference, a throwback to the old cryptic command, but it still has new art, and that new art is stunning. Without the possibility of reprinting with new art, we don't get that is a masterpiece. So by having that in the game, I think it's better for it.
I really liked that throwback, and I think a lot of people did, but of course that's because the original art is so memorable.
Yes, but it's memorable not particularly because of the art, but because of the card's power, but that's a different discussion. How about we go 45 seconds for your rebuttal about seeing new art? Who doesn't like new art?
It's It's not that I don't like new art. It's that I feel we are making too many new arts to the point that we are diminishing all of them. What you bring up in terms of Cryptic Command is a great example. There has only ever been one incredibly rare alternate Cryptic Command art up until Iconic Masters. And the Iconic Masters alternate art, new art for it, is a callback to the original. But imagine that now we reprint Cryptic Command 9 more times. Well, we should, because that card is too expensive, but we would have too many new arts and none of them would be iconic. If we have a superhero, do you understand why Superman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman all look the same with very minor changes? It's because those outfits are iconic, and so too is Magic artwork. So this is a topic I'm really glad that we had on the show with you, because you did a series of videos where I feel you changed your opinion on new artwork. Your original Snapcaster Mage video, which I'll of course link in the description, I can't believe anyone hasn't seen it at this point, was one where you were upset at the idea that new artwork was coming out, specifically in regards to the invitational cards where a player's likeness was used for the card that they helped design, and then you revisited it later in another excellent video, and you said you had completely changed your mind, and that being able to pick that whether or not you want the original Snapcaster Mage or the new Snapcaster Mage is a huge advantage. I respect that you were able to change your mind and look at things complexly, and so I'm glad we got to debate this.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I think really looking at the new Ranger of Eos made me reconsider, because again, we gave space to Ryan Pancoast to provide an unbelievable illustration for that card. So it's about, going back to the Planeswalker thing, it's about continuing to reinvent the game in small, subtle ways, and I think artwork is a great conduit for that. But I do appreciate your point saying, like, hey, there's too many versions. I think Negate is the perfect example of that. Like, now I really don't know which Negate is which, and since most, blue counterspell magic spells sort of look the same, you can kind of interchange Spell Pierce for Negate, for Dispel, or whatever. I do agree that there is absolutely a nice balance. You want to keep the number to a minimum, but they still need to exist. I like new art on new cards.
When I took my hiatus after high school and up until I returned, I thought about Magic constantly. It had that big of an impact upon me, and so even when I wasn't playing it for 10 years, I still thought about it. And what I thought about all that time, and I'm not just saying this, it's completely true, I did not think about what the cards did. I did not think about their mechanics. I did not think even so much about their names. I thought about their artwork and what I remembered about their artwork. So it's a powerful topic, and I think that even though we debated pro or con, that these are complex issues, and there is no absolute right or wrong to any of these topics. It's all a river that we must navigate ourselves, or rather that Wizards of the Coast is going to navigate for us with their decisions, and maybe occasionally listen to some of our calls from the ship below. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week, Sam. I'm really glad that you could fill in for Josh. For anyone who does not already know about the brilliant work that you create, can you take a moment to tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at Rhystic Studies on Twitter. That's the best place to contact me. Of course, I'm on YouTube. Prof and Wedge and I have been YouTubing together since 2014. Yeah, early 2014.
Old school. We kick it old school.
Yeah, old school.
The 2014.
That's right. That's us, class of 2014. So I'm on YouTube at The Magic Man Sam. I'm at RhysticStudies.com. Most of my content discusses magic art, but it also discusses a lot of the history of the game. So either you like magic art or you don't know you like magic art. Maybe you can enjoy some of the videos I produce, but certainly you can like the retrospects that I do. So yeah, check me out. Of course, big time thanks to Prof for continuing to support me and host me and invite me to guest on his show. I appreciate that, Prof.
Well, I appreciate you coming down, and I think this was a really great episode, and I don't think anybody who would watch one of your videos would not enjoy them. So I urge everyone who has not checked out Sam's work to go check it out now. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us this week. I think we had a great debate. Leave your suggestions in the comments below for topics you want to see debated on the next In Response. And don't forget, you can vote to see who won each debate by clicking on the eye on your screen during each segment. I'm the Professor, and until next week, when In Response resolves. And this video is brought to you by my and many other people's local game store, Card Kingdom, a brick-and-mortar pillar of this community, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. These are the people that keep Tolarian Community College going and growing strong. So thank you.